In the crystalline observation deck of the Xylaxian flagship Eternal Dominion, High Commander Verix stood motionless, his iridescent scales reflecting the blue-green orb of Earth below. His compound eyes processed the spectrum of light emanating from the planet, analyzing its composition with cold precision. Behind him, Science Director Nyx shuffled nervously, her tentacles twisting around her data tablet. Another primitive world, Verix declared, mandibles clicking in dismissal. Barely worth our attention. High Commander, Nyx began, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with anxiety. The preliminary data suggests we should exercise caution. Their technological progression rate is unusual. Verix turned, his towering frame casting a shadow over the smaller scientist. Unusual. They haven't even established a unified planetary government. Their spacecraft can barely reach their own moon. What could possibly warrant caution? Nyx's tentacles flicked across her tablet, projecting a holographic timeline into the space between them. This is their technological progression over the last century, she explained, gestures precise and controlled. Notice the acceleration curve. It's exponential. No other species we've encountered shows this pattern. The timeline showed flashes of human advancement, from primitive combustion engines to nuclear power, from basic radio to quantum communications, from simple computing to the beginnings of artificial intelligence. Each leap seemed to happen faster than the last. More importantly, Nyx continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, they appear to accelerate most rapidly under pressure. Wars, disasters, resource shortages, all trigger massive technological surges. Verix waved a clawed hand through the hologram, dispersing it. You sound like those paranoid mystics from the Galactic Council. Beware the young races, they say. Some flames burn too hot to control. We are the Xylaxian Empire. We have subjugated 1,000 worlds. This will be no different. Deep in the ship's archives, a message from the Galactic Council pulsed unread. ADVI SORO. Species designation human. Extreme CAUSHION. Recalcomemendid. Directi intervention. Ain Sadel. Verix issued his orders with typical imperial efficiency. A small fleet would be dispatched, enough to demonstrate overwhelming force without depleting their military resources. Standard protocol: establish orbital superiority, neutralize major military installations, and demand surrender. The humans would join the Empire as all others had before them. In her laboratory, Nyx continued her analysis. Something about the humans' neural patterns troubled her. They didn't think linearly like most species. Their problem-solving methods seemed almost chaotic, following paths that her most advanced algorithms couldn't predict. When presented with a problem, they didn't just seek solutions. They imagined possibilities that didn't exist yet. She sent her findings to the High Command, marking them as urgent. The report was filed away with thousands of others, deemed interesting but ultimately irrelevant to military planning. On Earth, the first signs of the coming invasion were detected by an amateur astronomer in New Zealand. Sarah Chen had been tracking what she thought was a new comet when she noticed the object changing course. Within hours, observatories worldwide confirmed her findings. Multiple objects of artificial origin were approaching Earth. The global response was not what the Xylaxians expected. Instead of panic, there was a strange calm. Instead of chaos, there was coordination. In secure facilities across the planet, plans that had existed only as theoretical exercises began to take shape. Dr. James Martinez, head of the Planetary Defense Initiative, addressed the emergency United Nations session. We've prepared for this moment since we first looked up at the stars. Every science fiction story, every war game scenario, every crazy theory about alien invasion, they've all been preparation. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our resources. It's our imagination. We've spent centuries imagining this fight. Now we get to live it. In orbit, Verix reviewed the final invasion plans. The humans had detected them. Primitive radar systems had tracked their approach. Yet there were no signs of mass panic, no widespread civil unrest. Even their communications seemed normal, filled with the usual entertainment and commercial traffic. They don't understand what's coming, he concluded, mandibles clicking in amusement. Perhaps they think we're peaceful visitors. Nix made one final attempt to warn him. Sir, their response pattern doesn't match any known species. They're too calm, too coordinated. I believe they're... Enough, Varix interrupted. Your obsession with these primitives borders on insubordination. Proceed with the invasion plan. As the Xylaxian fleet moved into attack position, they remained unaware of a crucial fact. Humanity had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment. Every war they'd fought, every story they'd told, every game they'd played had been rehearsal for the day they'd face something truly alien. They weren't afraid of the unknown. They were excited by it. The Xylaxians were about to learn why the Galactic Council's warning hadn't just been about humanity's potential for violence or their rapid technological growth. It was about something far more dangerous, their ability to turn disadvantage into opportunity, to transform defeat into victory, and to emerge stronger from every challenge they faced. The invasion was about to begin, and with it, the greatest miscalculation in Xylaxian military history. In the depths of DRPA's quantum computing facility, Dr. Elena Rodriguez hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her eyes were fixed on streams of data flowing across holographic displays, tracking the movements of the alien fleet. Behind her, teams of scientists and military analysts worked in focused silence, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of screens. They're maintaining a perfect geometric formation, she muttered, fingers dancing across the interface. Too perfect. No variance, no adaptation to local space conditions. A smile crept across her face. They don't expect to need tactical flexibility. Across the globe, humanity's response unfolded with practiced precision. In underground facilities and hidden bunkers, weapons and defenses that had existed only in theoretical designs were rapidly becoming reality. The aliens had made their first mistake. They'd given Earth time to prepare. In orbit, the International Space Station had gone dark, appearing abandoned. In reality, it had transformed into the nerve center of Earth's orbital defense network. Commander Wei Chen watched as microsatellites, disguised as space debris, moved silently into position. Remarkable, he transmitted to ground control. They haven't even noticed the pattern. Their sensors are only looking for active power signatures. The Xylaxian invasion fleet maintained its position at the edge of lunar orbit, their ships arranged in the same perfect formation they'd used to subjugate 1,000 worlds. Inside the flagship, Science Director Nix's concerns grew stronger. Her analysis of human communications had revealed something unprecedented. High Commander, she reported, her tentacles coiling anxiously, their entertainment media. It's troubling. They have thousands of simulated scenarios about alien invasions. They'd been imagining this conflict for centuries, gaming out responses, considering possibilities we haven't even thought of. Varix dismissed her concerns with a wave. Fiction, dreams, stories to frighten their young. Our technological superiority is absolute. But Nix couldn't shake her unease. She discovered something in their transmission patterns, subtle irregularities that suggested vast amounts of data moving through channels that shouldn't exist. The humans were coordinating something, but her instruments couldn't detect what. In the Himalayan Quantum Research Facility, Dr. Aisha Patel made the breakthrough they'd been waiting for. Her team had been studying the alien ship's energy signatures, and they'd found a pattern. Their shields, she announced to the Global Defense Council, they operate on a predictable frequency. They've never needed to change it because they've never faced an enemy who could detect it. In Tokyo, robotics expert Dr. Takeshi Yamamoto led the final tests of the nanite defense system. Billions of microscopic machines, each one programmed with adaptive algorithms inspired by Earth's own evolutionary processes. They expect us to fight with missiles and bullets, he told his team. They don't understand that size isn't everything. The Zylaxian fleet began its final approach, their weapons charging with enough power to level Earth's major cities. They expected resistance. Primitive missiles, perhaps some nuclear weapons. Their shields could handle anything this young race could throw at them. What they didn't expect was nothing. No missiles launched. No weapons fired. Even the primitive radar systems that had been tracking them seemed to have gone silent. In the flagship's command center, Verix felt the first stirring of unease. "Status report," he commanded. "Sir," his tactical officer responded, "we're detecting no active defense systems. Their military installations appear to be powering down." Nyx's tentacles writhed with agitation. This isn't right. Their behavior patterns don't match any known surrender response. They're doing something we don't understand. In secure facilities across Earth, humanity held its breath. Years of preparation, billions in secret research, and countless simulated scenarios had led to this moment. They'd studied the aliens' approach, analyzed their patterns, and found their weakness, their absolute confidence in their own superiority. Dr. Martinez addressed the Global Defense Council one final time. "They expect us to fight like they do, with brute force and direct confrontation. But humanity's greatest weapons have always been our creativity and our ability to adapt. We've spent our entire history telling stories about this moment. Now we get to show them why." In orbit, Commander Chen gave the order they'd been waiting for. The seemingly dead satellites began to power up, not with conventional energy signatures, but with something new: quantum-entangled power sources that were invisible to Zylaxian sensors. The nanite clouds, disguised as cosmic dust, began their approach to the alien fleet. On the Eternal Dominion, Verix prepared to issue the surrender demand that had brought 1,000 worlds into the Empire. He didn't realize that Earth had already launched its counter-invasion, not with ships and soldiers, but with billions of microscopic machines that were even now working their way through his fleet's supposedly impenetrable shields. The humans had done something the Zylaxians couldn't comprehend. They'd turned their technological inferiority into an advantage. Instead of trying to match the aliens' advanced technology, they'd found ways to bypass it completely. The invasion was about to meet humanity's response, and it would teach the Zylaxian Empire a lesson they'd never forget. The first sign that something was wrong came from a junior engineer on the Zylaxian support vessel Unwavering Faith. A slight fluctuation in the shield harmonics, barely worth noting. By the time they realized what it meant, it was already too late. "High Commander," the tactical officer called out, his crystalline exoskeleton vibrating with concern. "We're detecting anomalies in our shield grid. Multiple ships reporting similar issues." On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Verix watched in disbelief as status indicators began shifting from secure green to warning amber across his fleet. "Impossible," he muttered. "Their technology is primitive. They haven't even attempted to attack." Science Director Nyx's tentacles were a blur of motion as she analyzed the incoming data. "Sir, the shield disruptions, they're coming from inside the barrier fields. Something has bypassed our defenses completely." In the Quantum Command Center beneath Geneva, Dr. Rodriguez monitored the nanite swarm's progress. "Phase 1 successful," she reported to the Global Defense Council. "The nanites have established themselves within their shield matrix, beginning Phase 2. The Zylaxian fleet's perfect formation began to waver as ships reported increasingly serious malfunctions. Their shields hadn't failed. Instead, something was changing them, altering their fundamental frequency in ways their systems couldn't correct. "Full spectrum scan," Verix commanded, his proud posture finally showing signs of stress. "Find the source of these disruptions." But the Zylaxians' advanced sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and conventional attacks, were blind to the microscopic machines that were now reproducing exponentially using their own shield energy as fuel. It was warfare on a scale they'd never imagined. Commander Weichen, watching from the transformed International Space Station, gave the signal to begin the second phase of Earth's defense. Across the globe, massive ground-based quantum transmitters activated, sending precisely targeted beams of entangled particles into space. Status report. Varix demanded as new alerts flooded his command center. "Sir, we're detecting some kind of quantum interference," his science officer responded, mandibles clicking in confusion. It's affecting our targeting systems. Our weapons can't establish lock on any planetary objectives." Nix's voice carried a note of dawning comprehension. "They're not trying to destroy our shields," she realized. "They're reprogramming them, turning our own defensive systems into a weapon against us." In Tokyo, Dr. Yamamoto's team activated the nanite's second-stage protocols. The microscopic machines began reorganizing themselves, forming complex networks that mimicked the neural patterns of Earth's most adaptable organisms. The Zylaxian fleet's shields weren't just failing, they were evolving. "Impossible," Varix whispered as he watched his fleet's formation dissolve into chaos. Ships began drifting out of position, their navigation systems compromised by the quantum interference. The perfect geometric patterns that had served the Empire for centuries were useless against an enemy that didn't play by their rules. Dr. Martinez addressed the Defense Council, his voice steady. "For centuries, we've told stories about aliens with overwhelming technological superiority. But in every story, humanity found a way. We didn't just prepare our weapons, we prepared our minds. We imagined every possibility, even the ones that seemed impossible." The Zylaxian fleet's response was predictable. They fell back on centuries of military doctrine, attempting to regroup into defensive formations. But their coordinated movements only made it easier for the nanite swarms to spread from ship to ship. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Varix faced a decision he'd never imagined possible. "Launch the invasion force," he commanded. "We'll bypass their orbital defenses and strike directly at their population centers." But as the Zylaxian dropships prepared to launch, they discovered another surprise. The quantum interference wasn't random. It had been precisely calibrated to disrupt their ship's artificial gravity systems. Without gravity control, their troops were effectively paralyzed. In her laboratory aboard the flagship, Nix finally understood what she'd been seeing in her analysis of human behavior. "They're not fighting the way we expected," she reported to High Command, "because they've spent their entire history imagining how to fight enemies exactly like us. Every piece of fiction, every war game, every theoretical scenario, it was all preparation." The Zylaxian Empire had expected to face primitive weapons and disorganized resistance. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. Their superior technology, their perfect formations, their unshakable confidence, all had become vulnerabilities. As his fleet fell into increasing disarray, Varix received a transmission from Earth. The message was simple: "Your shields are now under our control. Your weapons are ineffective. Would you like to discuss terms of surrender?" In that moment, the High Commander of the Zylaxian Empire learned what the Galactic Council had tried to warn them about. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their resources. It was their ability to imagine defeat and plan for it, to look at a superior force and see not an invincible enemy, but a puzzle to be solved. The invasion had failed before it even began, defeated not by superior firepower, but by humanity's unique gift: the ability to turn impossible into inevitable. In the aftermath of the failed invasion, humanity didn't just survive, they thrived. The captured Zylaxian vessels became technological goldmines, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of simply copying the alien technology, human scientists began to reimagine it entirely. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the reverse engineering facility beneath the Atacama Desert, studying the holographic display of a Zylaxian shield generator. "See this?" She pointed to a complex energy matrix. "They designed it to be perfect, unchanging. That's why it failed. In nature, the strongest systems are the ones that can adapt." 3 months after the invasion attempt, the first human-modified Zylaxian ship took flight. It looked nothing like its original form. Where the alien vessel had been geometric and precise, the human version was organic and fluid, its systems designed to evolve in response to threats. They built their technology to dominate space. Dr. Takeshi Yamamoto explained to the Global Defense Council, "We're building ours to live with it." In orbit, Commander Wei Chen coordinated the deployment of Earth's first deep space defense network. The satellites weren't just weapons platforms. They were laboratories, each one running millions of simulations, constantly evolving new strategies for dealing with potential threats. But the Xylaxian Empire wasn't finished. As news of their defeat spread through their territories, High Command prepared a response that would demonstrate their absolute power. This time, they would send not just a fleet, but an armada. Science Director Nix, now regarded with suspicion for her earlier warnings, made one final attempt to prevent disaster. "The humans don't think like us," she insisted to the Imperial Council. "Every defeat makes them stronger. Every challenge teaches them something new." Her warnings fell on deaf ears. The Empire had ruled the stars for millennia by following one simple principle: overwhelming force solves all problems. They couldn't comprehend an enemy that grew stronger from defeat. On Earth, the detection of the approaching armada was met not with fear, but with anticipation. In labs and research centers across the planet, scientists and engineers had been preparing for this moment. Dr. Aisha Patil unveiled the quantum mesh network that would become humanity's greatest defensive achievement. "The Xylaxians think in terms of barriers," she explained. "Shields, walls, boundaries. We've created something different, a dynamic field that learns and adapts in real time." The first battle of the second invasion attempt lasted less than an hour. The massive Xylaxian armada, nearly 10 times the size of the first invasion fleet, found itself facing an enemy that had evolved beyond their understanding. Human ships, built using hybrid technology that merged Earth innovation with Xylaxian power, moved in ways that defied the Empire's tactical computers. Their weapons didn't just penetrate shields. They adapted to them, changing frequency and form faster than the Xylaxians could respond. But it was the human approach to space combat that truly demonstrated how far they'd come. Instead of meeting the Xylaxian armada in traditional ship-to-ship combat, they turned space itself into a weapon. Dr. Martinez, watching from the Quantum Command Center, smiled as the plan unfolded. "They still think space is empty," he observed. "They never considered that we'd fill it with billions of networked nanomachines, turning the void itself into our ally." The Xylaxian ships, attempting to maintain their rigid formations, found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't even see. The quantum mesh network didn't just disable their systems, it reprogrammed them, turning ship against ship, creating chaos in their perfectly ordered ranks. In her laboratory aboard the Xylaxian flagship Eternal Vengeance, Nix watched in fascination as human technology evolved during the battle itself. Their ships weren't just fighting. They were learning, adapting, becoming more effective with each passing moment. "They'd done something we never considered," she reported to High Command. "They've merged biological principles with technological systems. Their machines aren't just tools, they're almost alive." The Imperial Admiral, watching his armada fall into disarray, finally understood what they were facing. Humanity hadn't just survived their first invasion. They'd used it as a teaching tool, a way to understand Xylaxian technology intimately enough to transform it into something new. As the battle turned into a rout, human ships began demonstrating capabilities that even their creators hadn't predicted. The quantum mesh network, learning from the combat data, started developing new defensive strategies autonomously. Ship systems evolved in real time, each engagement making them more effective against Xylaxian weapons. The Empire's mighty armada, built to demonstrate overwhelming force, instead became a demonstration of humanity's greatest strength: the ability to turn defeat into victory, to learn from every failure, and to imagine possibilities that their enemies couldn't even conceive. As the remnants of the Xylaxian fleet retreated into hyperspace, they carried with them a terrible realization. They hadn't just failed to defeat humanity. They had given them the tools and knowledge needed to become something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that could adapt faster than the speed of combat itself. The fall of the Zalaxian Empire wasn't marked by a single massive battle or a dramatic last stand. Instead, it crumbled from within, as world after world witnessed humanity's impossible victory and began to question the Empire's supposed invincibility. In the crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council, representatives from 100 species gathered to discuss the unprecedented situation. The Xylaxians, who had dominated space for millennia, had been defeated not once but twice by a species that had only recently mastered spaceflight. Science Director Nix, now speaking on behalf of a growing reform movement within the Empire, addressed the Council. "We fundamentally misunderstood what makes humans dangerous," she explained, her tentacles moving in precise academic patterns. "We thought their threat was technological. In reality, their technology is merely a symptom of something far more powerful, their ability to imagine and adapt." On Earth, humanity's evolution continued at an astonishing pace. The quantum mesh network that had defended Earth had grown into something new, a living interface between human consciousness and space itself. Ships were no longer simply vessels. They had become extensions of human creativity and will. Dr. Rodriguez, now heading the Global Space Initiative, demonstrated the latest breakthrough to an assembly of world leaders. "We've learned to think differently about space," she explained as a holographic display showed ships moving in ways that seemed to defy physics. The Xylaxians saw it as a void to be conquered. "We've learned to see it as a medium to be shaped." The Empire's final attempt to maintain control came not through military might, but through economic warfare. They attempted to isolate Earth, to cut off the young species from galactic trade and resources. It was perhaps their greatest miscalculation yet. Dr. Takeshi Yamamoto unveiled humanity's response, a network of quantum tunnels that bypassed traditional space lanes entirely. "They thought they could contain us using the same old barriers," he said with a quiet smile. "They never understood that humans don't accept limitations. We transform them into opportunities." As the Empire's grip weakened, more and more worlds began reaching out to Earth, not as supplicants but as students. They had watched humanity take Xylaxian technology and reshape it into something new, and they wanted to learn. In the Quantum Command Center, now expanded into a global education hub, Dr. Aisha Patel led delegations from across the galaxy in understanding not just human technology, but human thinking. "The key isn't the tools," she explained to a group of alien scientists. "It's learning to see problems as opportunities for evolution." The Xylaxian reform movement, led by Nix and others who had recognized the need for change, began dismantling the Empire's rigid hierarchies. They had learned a harsh but valuable lesson. In a universe full of challenges, adaptation was not just an advantage, it was a necessity for survival. Commander Wei Chen, now Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, addressed the assembly on the 5th anniversary of the first invasion attempt. "Humanity doesn't seek to build an empire," he declared. "We seek to build understanding. The universe is too vast, too complex, too wonderful for any single species to claim dominion over it." But perhaps the most profound change wasn't in space or technology, but in how species across the galaxy began to think about themselves and their place in the cosmos. The human approach to problems, creative, adaptive, collaborative, began to spread. Dr. Martinez, watching a group of human and alien children working together in the new Interstellar Academy, reflected on how far they'd come. "The Xylaxians thought they were coming to conquer us," he mused. "Instead, they gave us the opportunity to show the galaxy a new way forward." The quantum mesh network, now spanning multiple star systems, had evolved into something its creators hadn't imagined, a living library of shared knowledge and experience, allowing species across the galaxy to learn from each other in real time. On what had once been the Xylaxian throne world, Nick stood with a human delegation, watching ships of a dozen species moving through space in harmony. "We thought we were the teachers of the galaxy," she admitted. "You showed us that true strength lies not in maintaining power, but in having the courage to change." Humanity had done more than survive an invasion or defeat an empire. They had introduced something new to the galaxy, the idea that evolution wasn't just a biological process, but a choice that any species could make. The ability to look at the impossible and see possibility, to face limitation and imagine beyond it, to meet defeat and learn from it. As Earth's influence spread throughout the galaxy, it wasn't through conquest or domination, but through the sharing of their most powerful technology. The ability to imagine, to adapt, and to see in every challenge the seeds of transformation. The stars had once belonged to an empire that sought to remain unchanging and eternal. Now they belonged to those who were willing to evolve, to learn, and to dream of what might be possible. The Galactic Council's original warning about humanity had been correct, but incomplete. Humans weren't just dangerous because they could adapt and evolve. They were remarkable because they could teach others to do the same. In the end, that was their greatest victory. Not defeating an empire, but helping the galaxy imagine a better way to live among the stars.